The Ice Princess just scored 2000, and the entire academy goes silent. Teachers call her a once-in-a-century genius. Then there's our boy Minato. He looks at the crystal, and mutters, should I use 0.1%, or just break it? He taps it, and, boom. He doesn't just get a high score, he literally nukes the machine because it can't handle a single % of his mana. But here's the funny part. They think the device is defective, so they label him trash. And some arrogant fire prodigy drags him onto his team to bully him. Biggest mistake of his life. Because he doesn't know he just recruited a reincarnated great sage. Level 99,999,999. A guy who treats world-ending disasters like warm-ups. Japan, 1970, the heart of Tokyo was consumed by a hellish crimson glow as fires raged across the cityscape, destroying everything in their path. Smoke billowed into the darkened sky where a pale moon hung like a silent witness to the carnage. The iconic structure of Tokyo Tower lies broken and twisted, its red steel limbs succumbing to the overwhelming force of the invasion. Amidst the ruins, embers dance in the air like malevolent spirits, illuminating the desperate struggle of those who remain. Suddenly, the ground trembles with a rhythmic thud that heralded the arrival of something terrifying. Mages dressed in blue uniforms stand their ground, their hands outstretched as magic circles hum with power. Green, blue, and yellow rings of light manifest, etched with ancient runes that flicker with mana. One mage with hair as red as flames screams fire, his voice cracking under the weight of fear. His comrades echo the cry, their killing intent focused on the shadows moving through the thick smoke. A massive blast of energy erupts, blooming into a blinding sphere of white and orange light that tears through debris. The violent shockwave sends dust and heat rippling outward, masking the battlefield in a thick haze of gray soot. As the light fades, the mages peer through the gloom, hoping to see ruins. Instead, the silhouette of a nightmare begins to take shape, rising from the crater with pure malice. It is a creature of chitinous armor and jagged protrusions, its many eyes glowing red. At the center of its massive chest sits a polished purple gem, a core of condensed mana pulsing. The lead mage staggers back, his face pale with disbelief. No way, he whispers, realizing their combined magic had not left a scratch. The other soldiers share his terror, their morale crumbling as they stare at the beast. We are so fucked, one mutters, tears welling as he accepts his demise. The monster lets out a guttural roar that vibrates through their bones, a sound of pure destruction. It moves with a speed that defies its massive size, creating a vacuum that pulls the air. Mages raise their arms to shield their faces from the sudden gale, the wind whipping their uniforms. Dust clouds billow upward, obscuring the battlefield once more in a shroud. Through the chaos, a new presence makes itself known, a fluctuation in the mana that feels powerful. A single hand reaches out through the settling dust, its palm open and steady. Above the hand, a figure begins to coalesce, standing with a calm that borders on divine. He has hair as white as snow and eyes that hold the depth of a calm ocean. The mages look up in awe, their despair forgotten as they recognize the savior. You are, the lead mage starts to say, his breath hitching in his throat. The white-haired man turns his head slightly, offering a small smile to the battered soldiers. You have done well, he says, his voice carrying a weight of authority that soothes them. The mages begin to sob with relief, their shoulders shaking as the burden is lifted. He steps forward, his long dark cloak fluttering in the wind like wings. Ichikami Atsumu, the legendary founder of magic and the strongest mage, stands before them. His presence alone seems to push back the shadows, his mana radiating in a firm pulse. He looks toward the monsters and commands the soldiers to retreat, telling them to leave everything to him. The soldiers do not hesitate, their trust in the legend absolute as they turn and run. Retreat, they shout to one another, their voices filled with hope. One young mage pauses to look back, asking if they can really leave that man. His superior grabs him by the collar, calling him a dumbass for his ignorance. He is the person standing right there, the founder and the pinnacle of all magical arts. The scene shifts as the title of the sage who could use all magic appears. The smoke clears to reveal Atsumu standing solitary against a literal sea of monsters. He shows no fear, his hands resting casually as he surveys the ranks. The monsters begin to circle, their killing intent thick enough to choke a human. Atsumu simply narrows his eyes and remarks that they are too slow for him. With a movement fluid it appears as a blur, he evades a strike. He beckons the creatures forward with a simple gesture, inviting the entire horde. Come at me, he states, his voice calm despite the overwhelming numbers. A decade ago, the world changed when monsters suddenly appeared everywhere. This event, known as the Calamity, brought civilization to its knees as weapons were useless. Humanity began opening their eyes to the potential of magic to strike back. Magic soon became the one and only thing capable of defeating the monsters. The war continued for over a decade, a grueling conflict that tested everyone. Back in the present, Atsumu stands as the final line of defense. He looks up where a terrifying entity is descending through a rift. It is a demon god, the top-ranked monster and boss of the calamity. Its presence is heralded by lightning that crackles with a sickly light. The pressure it exerts is enormous, a weight that makes the ground crack. What enormous magic power and pressure, Atsumu thinks as sweat forms. The demon god is a nightmare with massive wings and body forged from darkness. Atsumu does not back down, even though his body bears many scars. He knows he must use his full power from the start to survive. His eyes glow as he begins to chant, his mana fluctuating wildly. He is suddenly using 14th level magic, a tier of supreme power. The air around him begins to warp as he prepares compound magic. A massive magic circle expands beneath him, glowing with a rainbow. From the center of this array, a colossal structure of wood erupts. The vines are thick and covered in glowing runes, movement accompanied by grinding. Atsumu pours every ounce of his strength into the spell, face contorting. The demon god responds with a blast of malice that collided with force. The screen is filled with flashes of light as the forces fight. Atsumu feels the impact in his chest, the force pushing him back. He lets out a pained grunt, his teeth gritted as he fights. The explosion sends debris flying in every direction, leveling the ruins. As the light finally begins to fade, Atsumu's silhouette is seen. He is down on one knee, his breath coming in gasps as blood trickles. His cloak is ruined and his eyes show fatigue, yet his gaze remains fixed. He reaches out a hand to steady himself, his fingers digging into earth. He prepares to stand once more for the sake of all humanity. Atsumu knelt on the scorched earth, blood trickling down his face. He looked up as a massive mana fluctuation rippled through the air. Before him stood the demon god, a terrifying entity with lilac hair and wings that blotted out the sky. The killing intent from the monster was suffocating. He realized this was the strongest monster humanity had faced. Strong, so this is the strongest monster, he thought as his chest heaved. The demon god loomed like a harbinger of the end. Atsumu gritted his teeth, feeling the pressure of the creature presence. There is no way I can win at this rate, he admitted, recognizing the gap in their power. A golden glow emanated from his body as he stood. His cloak was tattered and his body was reaching its limit. I guess I have no other choice, he whispered. He channeled every drop of mana, causing a blue light to erupt from his feet. The energy spiraled in a massive pillar. Magic circles manifested in rapid succession. The power of magic is determined by its rank, and he knew he needed to reach a level beyond human comprehension. The number of magic circles determines a magic rank, and more rings appeared around him. The highest rank a demon god could achieve was the 14th. Atsumu raised his hand toward the heavens, his palm open. My limit is the 15th, he declared, his eyes glowing with ethereal light. He focused his entire being into a single point. 15th rank, innocent void, he thought as the circles converged. A blinding white light exploded, consuming the demon god and the ruins in an instant. The world was erased by a pure, silent brilliance. As the light faded, a new sun rose over a desolate landscape. The sky was clear and blue, a contrast to the fires before. In the center, the purple gem that served as the demon god core fell. It struck the ground and shattered into shimmering fragments. Atsumu fell backward, his body finally giving out as his strength vanished. He lay on his back, staring at the peaceful sky. I have defeated the boss, he thought with a tired smile, realizing the calamity could finally end. But I used up all my magic, he acknowledged, feeling his heartbeat slow. Dying as a great sage is not a bad way to go out, he mused. I lived a good life, he whispered, his eyes closing as he surrendered to darkness. His consciousness drifted into a vast white space where time had no meaning. He felt light, as if his soul was being pulled from his broken body. A golden wisp of energy emerged from his chest, floating upward and away. It flew through the air with purpose, crossing distances that spanned more than space. The wisp reached a hospital that stood quiet in the morning light. It moved through the walls and found a room where a young man lay motionless. The golden light merged with the body, its warmth spreading through cold limbs. The young man had dark hair and bandages on his neck. Suddenly, the fingers of his left hand twitched against the sheets. The young man's eyes snapped open, and he sat up with a violent start, his breath hitching. I am alive, he gasped, his voice sounding foreign. He looked at his hands, which were smaller and lacked the scars of battle. Even though I used up all my magic, he muttered, his confusion deepening. He looked around the quiet room with a small sound of confusion. What the hell is this? He asked, his mind racing. He looked at his reflection with wide eyes. No way, it cannot be possible, he stammered. He noticed a sign on the bed and leaned forward. The name Kusanagi Minato was printed in black letters. Who the hell is this? He shouted in his mind, the weight of this new identity sinking in. He felt the unfamiliar texture of the hospital gown against his skin. Everything felt surreal, like a dream he could not wake from. Window. A young man with dark messy hair stands before a white porcelain sink looking deeply into a mirror. He reaches up with his right hand to touch the white bandages that are wrapped tightly around his neck and his left cheek. His eyes are dark and filled with a sense of profound confusion as he stares at his own reflection. The door to the room slides open and an elderly doctor wearing a white coat and rectangular glasses enters the space. He is followed closely by a young nurse with brown hair tied back who is carrying a silver digital tablet against her chest. The doctor looks at the boy and speaks with a tone of great surprise as he calls out to Kusanagi-san. The boy turns away from the mirror with a startled expression and looks at the medical staff. He moves to the edge of the bed and sits down while the doctor begins a physical examination. The doctor reaches out and pulls the fabric of the light blue hospital gown away from the boy's chest to inspect the skin underneath. The doctor expresses that he cannot believe what he is seeing as his face becomes covered in sweat and his eyes go wide with disbelief. The nurse stands behind him with a similar expression of shock on her face. The doctor explains to the boy that he had lost consciousness and had been in a critical condition following a very severe traffic accident. However, he observes that the boy is now completely healed without any lingering injuries. He remarks to the nurse that it is almost as if the boy was healed by holy magic. The boy looks down at his own hands and thinks to himself in silence. He realizes that his body is automatically healing itself using holy magic because he was once a legendary sage who could use spells of the 15th rank. He is confused by the mention of a traffic accident because his last memory was fighting a powerful demon god during a great calamity. He wonders if his magic power was completely depleted in that final battle. The nurse helps him put on a fresh shirt as he asks her what she means by magic power. The doctor and nurse look at each other with deep concern. The boy explains that he remembers fighting monsters during the calamity. The doctor asks the boy to tell him his name and the current year to check his mental state. The boy answers that his name is Ichikami Minato and that the year should be 1970. The doctor leans in close and says that this looks like a clear case of memory impairment. He tells the boy that his name is actually Kusanagi Minato and that the year is actually 2022. The boy is stunned by this information and stares blankly. He looks over at a television on the wooden dresser. The television is very thin and displays a clean and sharp image of a news anchor in a suit. The boy marvels at the technology because he has never seen a television so advanced in his previous life. He then looks at a small calendar on the desk which confirms that the date is indeed in the year 2022. He points at the tablet in the nurse's hand and asks what that small device is. He is fascinated by the way she taps on the glowing screen with her finger. As he watches her work he realizes that he has truly been transported 50 years into the future. The doctor explains that the calamity he spoke of happened half a century ago and that such an event has not occurred since then. The boy asks if there are still monsters in the world. The doctor replies that while monsters still exist there are not many of them and the world is currently very peaceful. The boy feels a sense of relief washing over him. He thinks to himself that if the world has truly achieved peace then his sacrifice was worth it. He closes his eyes and thinks that it is a very good thing. A flashback appears showing the great sage in his red cloak and white hair standing before a massive purple demon goddess with wings. The sage is surrounded by glowing blue magic circles as he prepares his final attack. The doctor explains that the great sage sacrificed his life to save the world during that time. He tells the boy that he is not that legendary hero. The boy realizes that he died in that battle and has now been reincarnated into the body of Kusanagi Minato. He wonders why this has happened and if it was the work of a god. Some weeks pass and the boy is discharged from the hospital. The scene changes to the exterior of a tall apartment building under a clear blue sky. Minato walks into his new room which is small and simple. He finds a bed and a wooden table. He looks through some papers and a bank book. He discovers that the original Minato lost his parents when he was a small child. He was kicked out by his foster parents and sent to a boarding school. Since that time he has been living alone and supporting himself with the inheritance left by his parents. Minato lies down on a blue beanbag chair and holds a black smartphone in his hand. He thinks about the fact that there is no such thing as reincarnation magic. He wonders if his new life is a miracle or just a coincidence. He picks up a student identification card for the Kamui Magic Academy. The card has his photo and his name on it. He notes that there was no need for a magic academy in his previous life. He thinks the idea of a school for magic seems interesting. Suddenly the phone in his bag starts to vibrate with a loud buzzing sound. He reaches into the bag and pulls out the device. The screen shows an incoming call from someone named Tadano Koen. Minato does not know who this is and asks himself what he should do. He decides to ignore the call and tosses the phone onto the bed. A message then appears on the screen. The message is from Tadano-kun, who says he heard Minato was out of the hospital. The message demands that Minato come to school immediately because Tadano does not have enough money. Minato realizes that the previous owner of this body was being bullied for his money. The scene shifts to the entrance of the Kamui Magic Academy. The buildings are grand with blue roofs and tall towers. Minato walks through the gates wearing a white uniform with blue trim and a red tie. He feels excited to experience school life as an adult. He stops to watch a student with green hair who is practicing magic in the courtyard. The student creates a small magic circle and shoots a weak flame at a training dummy. Minato is shocked by how weak the magic is. He thinks that the power is only a tenth of what a beginner should have. He clutches his head in frustration and wonders if these students can even be called magicians. He feels that the world has become too drunk on peace and magic has declined too much. He walks into the school and finds classroom 2A. He slides the door open and sees his classmates sitting at their desks. He wonders if he has any friends in the room. Suddenly 3 boys approach him. The leader has spiky red hair and a mean look in his eyes. He calls Minato a fucker and asks why he ignored his text. He kicks a desk to intimidate Minato and calls him a powerless piece of trash. The bully demands that Minato hand over his inheritance money. Minato looks at him and asks who he is. The bully is furious and grabs Minato by his red tie. Minato suddenly smiles and grabs the bully's hands. He says that he remembers now and calls the bully his friend. The bully is confused and tells Minato to let go. He raises his fist to punch Minato. Just then a beautiful girl with blue hair walks into the room and says good morning. The bully immediately stops and blushes. He lets go of Minato and tries to look cool. The girl smiles as she walks past them. The red-haired bully tells Minato not to forget their deal and walks away. Minato stands there and adjusts his tie while saying geez. Minato sits at his desk in the back of the room as he adjusts the red tie of his white school uniform. The scene shifts to the front of the classroom where the teacher stands before a green chalkboard. He begins the lesson by announcing that they will discuss the Great Calamity. He turns and writes the words the Great Calamity in bold white chalk. He explains that in the year 1970 the hero Ichikami Minato sacrificed his life to save humanity. The teacher holds a piece of chalk as he narrates the dark history. He speaks of the final calamity known as the Great Calamity. As the teacher speaks, the screen shows a historical recap. Monsters appeared all over the world and humanity fell into despair. The teacher explains that the pioneer of magic Ichikami Minato thought differently than others. A flashback shows the sage standing with his back to the viewer wearing a dark cloak with silver patterns. He raises his hand as layers of blue and pink magic circles manifest around him. The teacher says the sage did not give in and defeated all monsters using his mana. He confronted the demon god and crushed him at the risk of his own life. Since that day the calamity has never returned. The teacher asks who Ichikami Minato was. A girl with blue hair named Mizuha raises her hand and shouts yes. The teacher calls on her to answer. Mizuha stands and explains he was the only survivor of the first calamity and the first magician. She adds that he is the reason Kamui Magic Academy was built. She believes he was the hero of the world and the idol of every magician. The teacher confirms her answer is correct. He reiterates that Minato was the only survivor and the first human to use magic. He says the academy was created to find magicians like him because he is the greatest in history. He warns that this will be on the test. The real Minato sits at his desk with a look of extreme discomfort. He thinks the word no over and over as he hears his past life glorified. He finds it embarrassing and did not expect to be tortured like this. He leans on his desk and thinks he should not have come to school. He realizes the world is truly at peace now. He wonders if peace is why magicians have become so weak. He rests his head on his hand and looks out the window as birds fly past. A bell rings and the teacher ends the class. He reminds them that tomorrow is the magic power assessment. Minato remains in his seat looking down. The red-haired bully Tadano walks over and leans on Minato's desk with a smug grin. He asks if Minato heard about the assessment. He mocks Minato by saying it will be fun to see how dogs hit his magic is. Minato looks at him with a cold expression and wonders if he will ever shut up. He decides to pack his things. Tadano brings up Minato's parents and says they had no magic power either. He calls Minato an orphan bastard and laughs. He says sorry bro I forgot while his friends laugh. Minato looks back and calmly calls the bully a fucktard. The bully stops laughing and his face contorts with rage. He asks what Minato said. He screams at Minato to get off his high horse and calls him a spazzo. He clenches his fist and channels mana with killing intent. A purple aura erupts and a magic circle appears. He unleashes a fire spell that fills the room with light. Students scream in terror as desks are knocked over. A girl and a boy watch in shock as a giant fireball descends toward Minato. The flames are intense and the magic circle glows with golden light. The fireball is massive and creates an explosion as it moves closer. The screen is filled with roaring flames as the magic consumes the space. The classroom is engulfed in the orange glow of the destructive fire as the students scramble away in panic. The red-haired boy grins with a sadistic pleasure as he watches his magic power explode into a pillar of heat. Minato remains standing perfectly still as the fire draws near his face. The intense heat causes the air to shimmer and the wooden desks to blacken under the pressure. The magic circle continues to rotate in the air as more mana is poured into the attack. The sound of the explosion echoes through the silent academy halls as the flames reach their peak intensity. The massive explosion rocks the foundation of the academy building, sending tremors through the floorboards and rattling the windows. The sound of the blast is a deafening roar that drowns out the screams of the terrified students who scramble away from the impact. The air is thick with the scent of ozone and charred wood as the fireball erupts in the center of the room. Mizuha, the girl with the striking blue hair, stares in absolute horror. Her eyes are wide with disbelief as she watches the destructive magic consume the space where Minato was standing just a moment ago. She can feel the intense heat radiating against her skin, causing her to raise her arms in a futile attempt to shield her face. She cries out that magic should not be used over such a meager squabble, her voice trembling with the realization that someone could truly get hurt. The red-haired bully, Tadano, is standing nearby, his face flushed with a mixture of adrenaline and burgeoning regret. Sweat beads on his forehead as he realizes the severity of his actions. He stammers that it is not his fault, claiming that Minato was the one who tried to pick a fight with him. His lackey, a boy with blue hair and a distinct scar across his nose, looks equally panicked as the thick gray smoke begins to fill the classroom. The wooden desks are scorched and the floor is covered in soot. As the smoke slowly begins to dissipate, a silhouette emerges from the haze. It is Minato. He is standing perfectly still, his white school uniform completely untouched by the flames. He holds his school bag casually in one hand, looking as though he has just finished a mundane conversation rather than surviving a lethal magical attack. Mizuha and the other students can only stare in stunned silence. Minato looks up, his expression one of mild annoyance as he scratches the back of his head and utters that they got him. Back in the classroom, the tension is palpable. The blue-haired lackey is shaking, his eyes darting between Minato and the scorched floor. He cannot comprehend how anyone could be unscathed after taking such magic head-on. Tadano is frozen in place, his jaw dropped as he stares at the boy he thought was a weakling. Minato stands there, but his mind is elsewhere. He thinks to himself that if this is level 1 magic, he can defend it with his magical barrier. He realizes that he does not need to use magic actively. However, a coldness begins to seep into his gaze. He reflects on the fact that he tolerated the bullying because he viewed Tadano as a child, but now he decides that the boy needs to be punished. A heavy pressure begins to fill the room, a psychological weight that makes it difficult for the other students to breathe. Minato does not move, but the mana surrounding him begins to react to his inner intent. A brilliant blue aura erupts from his body, swirling around him like a silent tempest. The air itself seems to vibrate with the sheer volume of his power. Mizuha feels her heart racing as she watches the transformation. The students are suddenly pinned to their spots, their bodies heavy and unresponsive. They gasp for air, wondering what kind of magic this could possibly be. Minato begins to walk forward, each step echoing with a terrifying finality. He moves through the swirling blue mana with the grace of a predator. The pressure he exerts is absolute, a manifestation of his ranking as the greatest magician in history. He reaches out a hand toward the cowering Tadano. The sound of grinding stone fills the air as the bully is forced to his knees by the sheer weight of Minato's killing intent. Tadano can only stare up in terror, his pride completely shattered. Suddenly, the door to the classroom bursts open. The teacher, a man with gray hair wearing a sharp suit, demands to know what that sound was. He looks around the room in confusion, his eyes landing on the smoke and the disarray. He asks if someone is using magic and demands an explanation. Minato immediately drops his aura, his face shifting from a cold mask of judgment to a fake smile. He waves his hand dismissively and tells the teacher that nothing happened in the classroom. He suggests that maybe someone was using magic outside and notes that magicians are so keen on using their magic. When the teacher points to the smoke, Minato calmly lies, stating that the smoke came from outside. The teacher, who knows Minato as Kusanagi, seems to believe the lie. He mutters that if it is Kusanagi saying this, it must be true. He turns and announces that he is going to go find the culprit, ordering the rest of the students to get back to their seats. Minato maintains his fake smile until the teacher leaves, then his expression returns to its usual neutral state. He thinks that maybe he will create false evidence to close this case down. Mizuha watches him, her suspicion growing. Tadano remains on the floor, trembling with rage and humiliation. He curses Kusanagi under his breath, but he is too afraid to speak aloud. Minato decides that he has had enough of school for the day. He thinks about the state of the world and the low level of magic among the students. He wonders if they could ever take a monster down. He knows that even if there is no calamity, there must be monsters around. He decides he should go check it out. As the sun sets, the scene transitions to the ruins of old Shibuya. The buildings are crumbling, covered in vines and shadows. Minato has changed into a black hoodie and a mask. He moves across the rooftops with speed, leaping across gaps with magic circles under his feet. He lands in the heart of the ruins. He observes that while the police seem to have cleared most threats, he can sense a monster's aura coming from very far away. He also detects a lone human there. He prepares to move toward the source of the mana. The scene shifts back to the classroom, where the teacher is standing before the green chalkboard. He tells the class that today's lesson is about the Great Calamity. He writes the words on the board, explaining the history of 1970. He speaks of the great sage Ichikami Minato who sacrificed himself to save humanity. The board describes the hero's final act. Monsters appeared and humanity despaired. However, the teacher explains that the pioneer of magic thought differently. A flashback shows the sage standing with his back to the world, his hand raised high as he faces the calamity. He stands with absolute confidence, his dark cloak billowing in the wind as layers of complex magic circles manifest around him. The teacher explains that the sage defeated all the monsters using his superior mana. He confronted the demon god and crushed him at the risk of his own life. Since that day, the calamity has never returned to the world. The teacher asks who Ichikami Minato was. Mizuha stands and explains he was the only survivor of the first calamity and the first magician. The dark sky is suddenly pierced by a brilliant streak of blue mana, cascading downward like a falling star against the backdrop of the ruined city. The energy crackles with an intensity that speaks of a high-ranking magician, leaving trails of light that illuminate the crumbling structures of Shibuya. As the light descends, it begins to coalesce into a complex geometric pattern, a magic circle of ancient design that rotates with a rhythmic hum. The ground below is a graveyard of concrete and twisted metal, where shadows stretch long and menacing in the moonlight. The blue and green mana streaks dance across the dark void, creating a tapestry of magical energy that signals a powerful arrival. The light is blinding, casting long, sharp shadows against the unseen surfaces of the world. As the magician descends, the air pressure shifts, creating a vacuum that pulls at the surrounding atmosphere. The magic circles are intricate, composed of thousands of tiny runes that glow with an inner light. Each rotation of the circle pulses with a heartbeat of pure mana, grounding the magician as he prepares to land. A young woman, dressed in a formal blue police uniform, finds herself pinned against the debris. Her silver hair is disheveled, and her breath comes in ragged gasps as she stares up at the nightmare before her. The monster is a grotesque aberration of flesh and bone, its body covered in coarse blue fur and jagged white plates that resemble armor. Multiple red eyes, glowing with a malevolent hunger, track her every move, while its massive jaws drip with a thick, viscous saliva. The creature towers over her, a manifestation of the calamity that once nearly wiped out humanity. It lets out a low, guttural growl that vibrates through the woman's chest, filling her with a sense of absolute despair. She reaches a trembling hand toward her collar, her fingers brushing against the metallic badge that identifies her as a magician of the police force. Despite her training, she is paralyzed by the overwhelming killing intent radiating from the beast. She whimpers, her voice a mere shadow of a plea, as she begs for the creature to stay away from her. The monster possesses multiple heads, each one more terrifying than the last, with rows of razor-sharp teeth that glisten with a foul liquid. Its skin is a mottled gray and blue, stretched tight over powerful muscles that ripple with every move. The purple crystals embedded in its flesh glow with a corrupt energy, pulsing like a dark heart. The woman can feel the heat of its breath on her skin, a sickeningly warm air that smells of decay and old blood. She cries out in terror, begging the monster to get away from her. The monster ignores her cries, its head snapping forward as it prepares to deliver a final, lethal blow. It let out a scream of "Gah!" its many mouths opening wide to consume its prey. Suddenly, the air itself seems to fracture. A series of sharp, blue lines cut through the darkness, signaling the arrival of a new presence. The hooded figure of Kusanagi, the reincarnated great sage, drops from the sky with the grace of a silent predator. He is clad in a simple black hoodie and a dark mask that conceals his features, yet his presence is more commanding than any high-ranking official. He lands with a heavy impact, the force of his arrival shattering the pavement beneath his feet and sending a shockwave of mana outward. The blue speed lines of his movement linger in the air like scars. The monster, sensing a threat far greater than its previous prey, turns its many eyes toward the newcomer. It lets out a deafening roar, a sound of pure rage and challenge that echoes through the empty streets. The hooded boy does not flinch. He stands tall, his gaze cold and focused as he assesses the low-level threat before him. With a single, fluid motion, he unleashes a burst of power that catches the monster off guard. The creature screams in agony, its multiple heads thrashing as it is consumed by the sheer force of the magician intent. The woman on the ground can only watch in stunned silence, her eyes wide with disbelief as she witnesses the effortless defeat of a monster she could not hope to touch. The beast collapses into a heap of motionless flesh, the light fading from its red eyes as the surrounding mana begins to settle. The hooded figure stands before the defeated beast, his silhouette framed by the glowing embers of the conflict. He turns slightly, his eyes meeting hers for a fleeting second. He tells her to be careful next time, his voice calm and devoid of any boastful pride. The woman tries to speak, to offer her thanks, but the words thank catch in her throat as she watches him move. She looks down at her badge and wonders if he is a police magician. She reflects on the encounter, thinking about how he seemed like a great magician. However, a realization strikes her that sends a chill down her spine. She thinks to herself that he did not chant a single spell. In this era, magic is a meticulous process of incantations and mana manipulation, yet this boy used it as naturally as breathing. Kusanagi, meanwhile, continues his traversal through the shadows of the city. His mind is occupied by the state of the world he has returned to. He thinks that he was right to keep his face hidden, as he has no desire to stand out so soon after his reincarnation. He is deeply troubled by the encounter, reflecting on the fact that a member of the police force was nearly killed by such a low-level monster. He realizes that the magic levels of this timeline have plummeted far more than he initially anticipated. It is not just the students at the academy who are weak, but even the police force as well. He looks down at his feet, feeling the vast reservoir of mana that still resides within him. He thinks that the magicians in this timeline have certainly become weaker. He decides that for now, he should take it upon himself to clear out the surrounding monsters that threaten the area. He thinks that even in this time period, they need his powers. He pushes off the ground, the magic circle beneath his foot glowing with a brilliant turquoise light that illuminates the surrounding ruins. He moves with a speed that turns the world into a blur of blue and black, his hoodie fluttering in the wind. He leaps from one crumbling pillar to the next, his movements guided by a mastery of mana that has not been seen in centuries. Each jump takes him higher into the night air, further away from the terrified woman and deeper into the shadows of Shibuya. He thinks that maybe he should annihilate all the surrounding monsters for now. The scene shifts abruptly to a classroom setting where a middle-aged man in a sharp gray suit is addressing a group of students. He stands with a composed posture, his hands gesturing toward a large, jagged crystal that sits atop a complex mechanical pedestal. The teacher tells the class that today they will be measuring their magic power. The crystal itself is a marvel of magical engineering, its translucent surface reflecting the ambient light of the room. The teacher continues his explanation, stating that it is crucial for every student to determine both the total amount of their mana and their specific elemental attribute. He emphasizes that these two values are the most important metrics for anyone who hopes to become a professional magician in this modern era. Among the students, Kusanagi Minato stands with a look of genuine confusion and mild distress. A single bead of sweat rolls down his forehead as he processes the teacher's words. He thinks to himself that it is quite strange that he cannot even measure his own power without relying on a machine like that. He reflects on the state of magical education in this timeline, feeling a sense of deep disappointment. He realizes that not only the students, but even the teachers seem to be ignorant of the most basic principles of magic. He believes that magic perception is the absolute foundation of all magical arts, yet here they are using mechanical crutches to compensate for a lack of innate skill. As he is lost in these thoughts, a young woman with vibrant blue hair and a sharp, white academy uniform approaches him. She stands with a dignified air, her gaze fixed directly on Minato as she asks if now would be a good time to talk. She carries herself with the poise of someone born into high society. She formally introduces herself to him, stating that she is the second daughter of the magic noble house of Mizuha. Her name is Mizuha Yuka. Minato looks at her with a blank expression, a small question mark appearing above his head in a moment of comedic confusion. He thinks to himself, wondering what exactly a magic noble is supposed to be. In his previous life as a great sage, such social hierarchies based on magical lineage did not exist. He searches his memories but concludes that he has never heard of this Mizuha family before. While she speaks, Minato begins to passively evaluate her magical presence. He stares at her with an intense, analytical gaze that makes her feel slightly uncomfortable. He observes the faint blue aura flickering around her body, noting that for someone who claims to come from a family of prominent magicians, her magic power seems remarkably lackluster. He is unimpressed by the quality of her mana, comparing it unfavorably to the standards of his own era. Yuka becomes increasingly irritated by his silence and his seemingly dismissive attitude. She wonders what is wrong with this guy, feeling that he is being incredibly rude. She thinks that after she so generously started a conversation with him, he should at least show some sign of gratitude. She tells him to be more grateful for her attention, her face flushing with a mix of anger and frustration. She clenches her fists at her sides, her dignity as a noble woman feeling threatened by his lack of a reaction. She takes a sharp, deep breath, forcing herself to calm down. She repeats to herself that she is a noble woman and must maintain her composure regardless of how much this guy pisses her off. Despite her anger, her mind drifts back to the events of the previous day. She recalls the moment when Kusanagi-kun was hit directly with magic, yet he emerged from the encounter completely unscathed. She is certain that there must be a reason for such an impossible display of resilience. She begins to ask him about yesterday, but her question is interrupted by the loud voice of the teacher. The man in the suit calls out to the students at the back of the room, telling them to get ready because it is time for their assessments. Minato seems to brighten up at this announcement, a small musical note appearing as he smiles with genuine excitement. He is eager to see how this world quantifies power. Yuka watches him, her eyes narrowing as she thinks that she will finally see his true power after his assessment is complete. The first student to step forward is a young man with spiky red hair and a confident, almost arrogant smirk. His name is Tadano Jun. He approaches the pedestal with a swagger, declaring that his mighty self is up next. He reaches out and places his palm firmly against the cold, jagged surface of the measuring crystal. A sudden, violent surge of energy erupts from the machine, accompanied by a loud sound effect. Bright orange flames burst forth from the crystal, swirling in a miniature firestorm that illuminates the entire room. The digital display on the pedestal rapidly counts upward until it stops at the number 1000. The teacher announces that Tadano Jun has a magic power of 1000 and that his elemental attribute is fire. Tadano is visibly pleased with himself, clenching his fist and declaring that his results are better than they were before. Minato watches the display with a thoughtful expression. He calculates the values in his head, realizing that if that display was considered a 1000, then the measuring standards of this world have not changed at all over the past 50 years. He finds this consistency useful for his own planning. Next, the teacher calls for Mizuha Yuka to take her turn. She walks toward the crystal with a graceful stride, her blue hair shimmering under the classroom lights. She places her hand on the device, and a massive torrent of swirling blue water magic erupts into the air. The display on the pedestal jumps significantly higher than Tadano, settling on the number 2000. The teacher announces that her attribute is water and her power level is 2000. The other students in the room are completely blown away by her performance. They cheer and clap, crying out in wonder at her talent. A young girl and boy in the crowd look at her with stars in their eyes, commenting that it is exactly what they expected from a fire magic prodigy like Tadano and a noble like Yuka. They call her lovely and treat her with immense respect. However, Minato is internally cringing at the display. He thinks to himself that surely this must be some kind of joke. He cannot believe that she is considered to be at the top of the academy with a score of only 2000. To him, such a level of power is not much better than that of a rank amateur. He stares at the cheering crowd with a look of profound disbelief, feeling as though he has landed in a world of children. Yuka turns back to look at him, her chest puffed out with pride and a smug smirk on her face. She tells him that this is the true power of the House of Mizuha, clearly expecting him to be intimidated. Minato finds her arrogance to be completely unbearable. He wonders why she looks so proud and wishes she would stop looking at him with that face. Finally, the teacher calls the name Kusanagi Minato. As he steps forward, the atmosphere in the room changes. The other students begin to whisper among themselves, recalling that he was ranked at the very bottom of the class last year. They acknowledge that he is impressive at studying, but they believe his talent in magic is non-existent. Tadano Jun watches him with a cruel smile, thinking that Minato is a retard with no talent. He hopes that Minato will completely embarrass himself in front of Yuka. Even Yuka watches with interest, wondering just how much magic power he actually possesses, though she is certain he will not be able to beat her score. Minato stands before the crystal, his hands in his pockets as he looks at the device. He reflects on his past life, thinking about how standing out too much back in the day was always a major pain. He briefly considers holding back his power to maintain a low profile. But then, he changes his mind. He decides that he should give it just a little bit of effort. He reaches out his hand, his eyes narrowing as he focuses his intent. As his fingers touch the crystal, he thinks that if this machine can measure the power of a great sage, then it should go ahead and try. The moment contact is made, the room is consumed by a cataclysmic explosion of light and sound. A massive rainbow-colored aura surges from his hand, far exceeding the capacity of the machine. The sound of the magic is represented by enormous, jagged characters that fill the frame. The air itself seems to fracture under the pressure of his mana. The pedestal begins to spark and crack, unable to contain the sheer volume of energy being forced into it. A blinding column of light shoots upward, shaking the very foundations of the building. The students are thrown back by the shockwave, Yuka screaming in terror as she tries to shield herself from the debris. The crystal shatters into 1,000 glowing pieces as the machine completely malfunctions. Minato stands in the center of the destruction, looking down at the ruined pedestal with a calm, almost bored expression. He reflects on the fact that the machine broke after he got just a little bit serious. He realizes that despite the chaos he has caused, nobody here could even sense the true scale of his magic power. The thick gray smoke from the crystal clears slowly, revealing the destruction left in the wake of Kusanagi Minato display of mana. As the dust settles over the cold dark floor, a single thought echoes within his mind, stating that nobody here could sense the true scale of his magic power. He stands perfectly calm among the rocks and twisted metal of the broken pedestal, his white uniform remaining pristine despite the eruption of energy that just occurred. He looks at the fallen students scattered across the room, their faces etched with a mix of confusion and fear as they struggle to understand what happened. Minato gazes at them with a cold, analytical detachment, wondering if these people are truly capable of becoming professional magicians in this era. The gap in their perception of mana makes him feel as though he is surrounded by children playing with forces they cannot even begin to comprehend. The teacher, a man in a suit, rushes toward the center of the room with a look of panic on his face. His forehead is sweating as he surveys the wreckage, his voice trembling as he asks the class if anybody is hurt. He reaches out a hand toward two students who are huddled on the floor, their bodies covered in light scratches and dust from the shockwave of the explosion. They look up at him with wide, trembling eyes and manage to stammer out that they are okay. The teacher lets out a breath of relief, but his attention quickly shifts back to the boy who was standing at the epicenter of the blast. He turns his gaze toward Minato, his eyes searching for any sign of injury on the boy who should have been vaporized by such a sudden eruption of magical energy. The man asks if he is okay, calling out to him as Kusanagi. Minato looks back at him with a blank expression, simply replying that he guesses he is fine. The teacher stares at him in disbelief, telling him that he is incredibly lucky because he was right in the middle of that massive explosion. He looks down at the smoking ruins of the pedestal, noting that this is the first time in his career that he has seen a measuring device get destroyed. He begins to wonder if the machine was perhaps defective, unable to handle even a basic measurement from a student. He sighs deeply, rubbing his temple as he realizes that this situation is not good at all. He explains to Minato that because the device is broken, they will not be able to determine his magic power or his attribute for the records. Minato tilts his head slightly, asking if that is a bad thing for his status. The teacher explains that the academy splits students into specific groups for combat classes based on results. He turns his head toward the back of the room, calling out the name of Tadano. Jun Tadano is sitting on a bench, wiping sweat from his face with a towel. The teacher asks if Tadano would be willing to take Kusanagi into his group for the training. Tadano looks up, a shadow falling over his eyes as a cruel smirk forms. He speaks with politeness, telling him he will take him in. The teacher smiles, clearly relieved. Tadano leans in close to Minato, whispering that he is looking forward to it. The scene shifts to the skeletal remains of old Shibuya, a city once bustling with life but now reduced to a graveyard of concrete and twisted metal. The sky above is a brilliant and mocking shade of blue, stretching over the jagged remains of skyscrapers that are slowly being consumed by creeping green vines and the relentless passage of time. Among these ruins, there are monsters still inhabiting places that were severely destroyed by the great calamity that reshaped the world long ago. A wolf-like creature with vibrant blue fur and bone-white armor plates prowls through the shadows of a shattered building, its golden horns glinting in the dim light of the afternoon sun. Its eyes glow with a predatory hunger as it searches for prey in the desolate streets. The current Shibuya is abandoned, a dangerous zone where only the brave or the foolish dare to tread. The teacher, a middle-aged man in a sharp gray suit, stands before his class of young students and explains that at regular intervals, professional magicians and the police come here to subjugate the monsters that have nested in the ruins. He gestures toward the desolate ruins, telling the teenagers that academy students are also required to help with that task as part of their combat training and practical education. He reassures the group that since more than half of the monsters have already been taken out by the professional magicians, they do not have to worry too much about facing anything they cannot handle. Kusanagi Minato stands at the back of the group, his dark hair catching the light as he listens with a look of pure boredom on his face. He thinks to himself that he did not expect a practical class so soon after his arrival, but he remains perfectly calm while his peers buzz with nervous energy. He looks around the familiar ruins and remembers that he was just here last night, doing his own investigation of the area. But as he scans the surroundings, a sense of unease begins to settle in his gut. He thinks that this is weird, because he is certain that he took out all the monsters in this area during his previous visit. His heightened senses tell him that there is still a powerful presence lurking nearby, even though there should be no sign of any disaster left in this sector. He wonders why monsters are showing up here again so quickly, and his eyes narrow as he tries to pinpoint the source of the mana he feels. The other students are oblivious to the danger, their voices filled with excitement and shallow confidence. Two girls laugh as they talk about competing to see who can slay more monsters, treating the dangerous mission like a simple school game. Minato watches them with a side eye, thinking that they are far too carefree for a practical class in a monster-infested ruin. A girl with blue hair and sharp eyes looks back at him, her expression suggesting that she might be the only other one sensing the shift in the air. The teacher claps his hands and announces that the practical class starts now, urging them all to work as a team for their own safety. Suddenly, a heavy presence approaches Minato from behind. Tadano Jun, a tall boy with messy red hair and a permanent scowl, steps forward with his hands shoved deep into his pockets. He is flanked by two of his lackeys who look just as arrogant as he does. Tadano points a finger at Minato and tells him to stay here and not get in their way during the hunt. He claims he is being kind by giving this advice and warns Minato not to get carried away just because of his previous luck during the power measurement. The red-haired boy is clearly fuming, his jealousy over Mizuha's interest in Minato radiating off him in waves of heat. He calls Minato bottom-of-the-barrel scum and tells him not to even speak to him. Minato looks at him with a blank expression and asks if it could be that Tadano actually likes Mizuha. This simple question sends Tadano into a state of absolute rage. His face turns a deep shade of red and a fiery aura erupts around his body as he grinds his teeth in fury. He begins to channel his mana, a bright orange magic circle appearing in front of his outstretched hand. He screams that Minato is dead, his intent to kill filling the narrow street. Minato does not move, his voice calm as he tells Tadano do not do it. He calmly tells the bully to look behind him, but Tadano thinks it is just a trick to get him to lower his guard. He shouts that he will not be fooled by such childish tricks, unaware of the massive shadow looming over his shoulder. A colossal demon soldier has emerged from the ruins, its jagged stone body pulsing with purple energy. Its single red eye stares down at the students with a hunger that freezes the blood in their veins. The students who were laughing moments ago are now screaming in terror as they realize a high-ranked monster is right behind them. Tadano lackeys beg him to save them, calling him Ju-chan and insisting that he can win because he is the strongest among them. Tadano tries to act brave, claiming it is light work for him as he launches his level 2 magic, Rock Break. A massive explosion of fire and stone hits the demon soldier directly in the chest, creating a thick cloud of smoke and dust. Tadano smiles and says the job is done, but his joy is short-lived. The demon soldier walks out of the smoke without a single scratch on its body. The realization of his powerlessness hits Tadano like a physical blow. Minato walks forward, explaining that a demon soldier cannot be taken down with such weak-level magic. The monster lets out a roar that shakes the ground, and the pressure of its mana causes Tadano to collapse. The bully is so terrified that he begins to cry, and a dark stain of urine spreads on the ground beneath him as he realizes he is going to die. The monster raises its claw to strike, but Minato steps directly in front of it. He asks the beast which of them is truly stronger, his voice cold and steady. He releases his own mana, a pillar of blue light that dwarfs the monster presence. The demon soldier trembles, its red eye widening in fear as it realizes it is facing a monster far more dangerous than itself. Minato prepares a level 1 fire arrow, the magic circle glowing with a heat that melts the nearby stone. He releases the spell, and a bolt of white fire streaks forward. The demon soldier is instantly consumed by a massive explosion that vaporizes its entire body. The street is filled with a wall of fire that reaches toward the sky, leaving nothing but ash behind. When the light finally begins to fade, Minato stands alone in the center of the destruction. Tadano Jun lies in the dirt, his face covered in soot and his eyes wide with a shock that borders on insanity. He stares at the spot where the monster once stood, then up at the boy he had called scum. His voice is a broken whisper as he asks what the fuck just happened. Tadano Jun stands frozen in the wake of the blinding light, his eyes wide and trembling with a mixture of terror and utter confusion. The massive explosion of white fire has left the air thick with the scent of ozone and scorched earth, and the heat still radiates from the spot where the monster once stood. He stares at the empty space, his mind struggling to process the sheer scale of the power he just witnessed. He whispers to himself, asking what the fuck just happened, his voice cracking under the weight of his own insignificance. The fiery aura that once surrounded him has vanished, replaced by a cold sweat that clings to his skin. He cannot believe his eyes, wondering if Kusanagi really just killed that demon soldier with such ease. To Tadano, a boy who prided himself on being the strongest in his class, this display of raw mana is a direct assault on his reality. He repeats that it is impossible, his teeth grinding together as he watches Minato walk away with a calm and steady gait. He wonders how someone like Kusanagi, a boy he considered bottom-of-the-barrel scum, could possess such overwhelming strength. Minato does not look back at the broken bully, his focus already shifting to the larger implications of the battle. His boots crunch on the cracked pavement as he moves through the ruins, his expression neutral and disconnected from the chaos he just caused. He thinks to himself that if he uses his level 1 magic, it is more than enough to kill a demon soldier. To him, the destruction of a high-rank monster was nothing more than a simple calculation, a basic application of his refined mana. However, a deeper concern begins to gnaw at his mind. He finds it strange for a demon soldier to be in Shibuya at all, especially in an area that was supposed to be cleared. He looks down at the ground and sees a jagged purple crystal, a remnant of the monster that pulses with a faint and sickly light. He remembers clearly that he killed every monster in this sector just yesterday, yet they have appeared again so quickly. This anomaly is deeply troubling to his heightened senses. He wonders if this is a bad omen before a disaster, a precursor to something far worse than a single demon soldier. He asks himself if the situation is more pressing than he initially expected, his eyes narrowing as he considers the possibility of another great calamity. A dark vision flashes through his mind, a memory of a world engulfed in flames and blood. He sees a sky turned red by the heat of 1,000 fires, where winged demons and stone giants roam the streets of a dying city. The screams of the innocent echo in his ears, and he sees a small girl kneeling in the dirt, clutching a tattered teddy bear to her chest. He clenches his fist tightly, the leather of his glove creaking under the force of his resolve. He looks up at the sky, his resolve hardening into a cold promise. He thinks to himself that even if a calamity was to happen again, he will save everyone. Behind him, Tadano lackeys are whispering in terrified tones. They ask each other if he really defeated a demon soldier, their voices shaking with fear. Tadano hears their whispers and is consumed by a fresh wave of humiliation. He turns toward a nearby concrete wall and slams his fist into it. The girl watches from side. We move quickly into the action as Mizuha demonstrates her magical capabilities. The air around her begins to vibrate with the resonance of gathering water mana. She focuses her intent with a sharp and determined look in her blue eyes. A text bubble appears in the center of the frame, declaring the activation of level 1 magic, Aqua Saucer. The blue light of the spell illuminates the surroundings as circular blades of pressurized water begin to manifest. They spin with a high-pitched whistle, cutting through the atmosphere with lethal precision. Mizuha is shown in her pristine school uniform, her blue hair swaying as she directs the flow of her power. A magical beast, a creature resembling a wolf with glowing red eyes and jagged armor plating, is caught in the path of the spell. The aqua saucers strike the ground around the creature, creating splashes of mana and dirt that fly into the air. Standing nearby, two of her classmates watch the display in total awe. The boy with brown hair and the girl with green pigtails are visibly impressed by her control. The boy exclaims that it is amazing, while the girl adds that this is exactly what one should expect from someone of Mizuha's standing. They represent the average student who views such level 1 magic as a high-tier achievement. Mizuha closes her eyes, a slight frown touching her lips as she listens to their praise. She thinks to herself that ordinary people are such a drag. Their low expectations and constant surprise at basic feats annoy her refined senses. However, she quickly shifts her mood, a smug smirk appearing on her face as she basks in her own perceived superiority. She tells herself that since she is a genius, it cannot be helped if others find her skills beyond their comprehension. She stands with her arms crossed, the emblem of her school shining on her jacket. Her attention is suddenly drawn toward a dark and narrow alleyway nestled between towering concrete buildings. She sees a group of boys standing in the shadows, their postures suggesting a tense situation. She thinks to herself that someone is getting bullied and decides she cannot miss this opportunity to intervene and show off her authority. She creeps closer, peeking around the corner of a cracked stone wall. Her expression shifts from curiosity to pure and unadulterated horror as she sees what is actually happening. In the center of the alley, a massive demon soldier towers over the cowering students. The creature is bathed in a sickly purple aura that pulses with an intense killing intent. Its wings are spread wide, casting a long and terrifying shadow over the cracked pavement. Its claws are sharp and hooked, looking capable of rending steel like paper. Mizuha trembles, her hand gripping the rough edge of the wall so hard her knuckles turn white. She realizes that this is not a common monster. She whispers the words demon soldier, her voice trembling with a fear she cannot hide. She knows that this is something the students cannot take on. It is a rank 5 threat, far beyond the level of a typical magical beast. Suddenly, the alley is engulfed in a blinding flash of orange and red light. A massive explosion of mana erupts, shaking the very foundations of the nearby buildings. Mizuha is forced to shield her eyes as the shockwave blasts outward, carrying the scent of smoke and burnt air. She grunts in pain, the heat of the fire singeing the atmosphere around her. When the smoke begins to clear, she sees small embers drifting through the air like dying stars. The ground is scorched black, and the demon soldier has been completely obliterated. Amidst the settling dust, a lone figure stands tall. It is Minato Kusanagi. His uniform is slightly tattered, and his tie is torn, but his expression is one of complete and utter indifference. He holds his hand out, the remnants of his magic still flickering around his fingers like golden sparks. Mizuha stares at him, her mind racing as she tries to process what she just witnessed. She wonders what that power was. She asks herself if that was really Kusanagi's magic. She remembers him as being extremely timid and having no aptitude for magic at all during their time in class. Yet, standing there now, he looks like a completely different person, radiating a pressure that makes her breath hitch. Mizuha realizes a terrifying fact that defies everything she has been taught. She did not hear him chant. The concept of magic without chanting is unheard of for a student of his age and rank. She is even more confused by how he could defeat a demon soldier using what appeared to be level 1 magic. The narrative shifts to explain the hierarchy of the demon world to provide context for this feat. A demon's strength is determined strictly by the number of crystals embedded in its dark and twisted body. The ranking system is established to categorize the threat levels that humanity faces. A rank 6 creature is a mere magical beast, often feral and driven by base instincts. A rank 5 threat is a demon soldier, possessing enough intelligence to coordinate attacks and a physical form that can withstand standard magical strikes. Above them, the ranks become exponentially more dangerous and rare. A rank 4 demon captain leads squads into battle with tactical precision, while a rank 3 demon general can lay waste to entire city blocks with a single spell. The rank 2 demon king is a legendary existence that few have ever survived seeing, and the rank 1 demon god is a being of myth, capable of ending entire civilizations with a single gesture of its crystal-laden wings. Mizuha reflects that it is common sense for modern magicians that one needs at least level 3 magic to even stand a chance against a demon soldier. Minato has completely shattered that logic. Minato begins to walk away from the scene of the destruction, his boots clicking rhythmically on the pavement. Mizuha remains hidden behind the wall, her heart hammering against her ribs. However, Minato stops and looks back over his shoulder, his gaze piercing through the shadows. He tells her that peeking around is a nice hobby to have. Mizuha is startled, her eyes wide as she realizes she has been spotted despite her efforts to remain quiet. She steps out from behind the wall, her face flushed with a mix of embarrassment and anger. She demands to know how he knew she was there. Minato looks at her with his deep purple eyes and replies that if she is a mage, it would be crazy not to know. His words are a direct and cold insult to her perceived genius. Minato turns his gaze away from her and looks toward the horizon. He notes that while the demon soldier is gone, there are still quite a number of magical beasts present in the area. He decides he should reduce some of their numbers to prevent further chaos. He raises his hand, and a bright yellow magic circle manifests in front of his palm. The air crackles with static energy. Text appears identifying the spell as level 2 magic, Magic Barret. Dozens of golden beams of light shoot out from the circle, streaking across the bright blue sky like a volley of arrows. From a distance, the other students look up and point at the spectacle. The boy with long blonde hair asks what those are, wondering if they are shooting stars appearing in the middle of the day. The girl with blue hair is paralyzed by the sheer quantity of magic being deployed. She realizes it is far too much mana for a single person to control. The scene shifts back to the ruins of the city where the danger is still very real. Multiple wolf-like magical beasts are shown prowling through the rubble, their eyes glowing with hunger. They surround two helpless students, a boy with messy hair and a girl with pink pigtails. The girl cries out that she cannot take this anymore, her voice breaking as the monsters close in. One of the beasts lunges forward with its mouth open, its teeth bared and ready to strike. The screen flashes with a blood-red text bubble as the monster releases a guttural gasp, its eyes glowing with a feral hunger that radiates a low-level killing intent. Just as the beast's teeth are about to sink into her uniform, it suddenly freezes in mid-air. The girl looks up with trembling blue eyes, her breath hitching as she realizes she is still alive. Suddenly, a high-pitched whine escapes the beast as it is engulfed in a brilliant yellow light. The Magic Barret spell strikes, incinerating the monster's flesh in an instant. The girl remains on the ground, her heart hammering against her ribs as the remnants of the creature turn into drifting ash and smoke. The boy with messy brown hair rushes to her side, his face pale with worry as he asks if she is okay. He looks down at the scorched earth where the beast once stood. He struggles to comprehend the power used to obliterate the monster. The scene shifts to high above the ruins of the city, where Minato Kusanagi stands atop a crumbling concrete structure. He looks out over the landscape, his purple eyes cold and detached as he watches his magic rain down upon the remaining threats. He whispers the words good, good, followed by the chilling observation that it feels good to kill them all. His level 2 magic, Magic Barret, continues to fire dozens of golden beams into the streets below, each one finding its mark with lethal precision. The air is thick with the scent of ozone and burnt mana as the magical beasts are hunted down one by one. Minato stands with his arms crossed, the wind whipping through his dark hair as he surveys the carnage he has created. However, a shadow of doubt crosses his face as he looks at the sheer number of fallen enemies. He asks himself if he did something wrong, his internal monologue questioning if he might have gone too far. He looks down at his hands, seeing the faint golden sparks still dancing on his fingertips. He realizes that in his moment of focus, he might have lost track of the original goal of the school exercise. He thinks to himself that he might have overdone it. He looks at the piles of monster corpses littering the alleyways and realizes he has ended up killing most of them. He reaches up to scratch the back of his head, a nervous sweat breaking out on his forehead as he considers the consequences. He thinks that the class cannot proceed. He needed to hold himself back. Minato Kusanagi is seen descending through the blue sky. His uniform flutters in the wind as he falls with controlled grace. He looks down at the landscape, his eyes tracking the movement of magic energy. With a sharp sound, he shifts his weight, preparing for landing. He reaches out with his senses, feeling the concrete buildings rushing past. His dark hair whips around his face as he focuses on a secluded alleyway. A green magic circle erupts beneath his feet. It glows with emerald light. The circle acts as a cushion, negating the kinetic force. His boots touch the pavement, and the circle dissipates into tiny green particles. Minato stands in the shadows, adjusting his tie and blazer. He thinks to himself that it should be fine around here. He looks around at the cracked walls, ensuring no one saw his entrance. He thinks there is no need to hide his power more than necessary, but standing out is such a pain. He walks toward a group gathered near the ruins. The air is heavy with the smell of ozone and mana. He sees a man in a suit crouching over the carcass of a fallen creature. The teacher examines the wounds. The creature has blue fur and jagged horns, its body riddled with holes. The teacher looks up, his face pale with shock. He asks how there can be so many magic beasts left. He had been under the impression that the area was clear. The teacher continues his analysis, his voice trembling. He notes that the herd should have been mostly hunted down. He looks back at the corpse, his eyes widening as he realizes the nature of the strike. He thinks to himself that all of them were taken down with a single strike. This was done by someone very skilled, he concludes. His mind races to identify the magic. Null attribute magic, he whispers. Firing countless magic bullets is a hallmark of high-level null magic, but the precision is beyond anything he has seen. Firing 2 of these bullets is no big deal, but when the number reaches above 6, it becomes a different level. He realizes this was not a student's job. The students are visibly shaken. 2 boys stand with their mouths open, expecting another attack. One of them shouts with a voice full of fear, asking why there were so many beasts present. He clutches his chest, his heart hammering. "We all nearly died, you know," he screams. The teacher reacts immediately, his face tensing with guilt. He bows his head low, offering his apologies. "My apologies," he says, his voice muffled. He explains that he was informed the police had cleared the pack. He admits he should have confirmed it from the school's side. "I am truly sorry for putting you all in danger," he adds to the kids. The girl with pink pigtails stands nearby, her blue eyes shimmering with tears. She looks toward the direction where the magic beams originated. She asks if someone came to save them. She doesn't know who it was, but the feeling of being protected lingers. She looks down at the ground, her voice a whisper as she expresses her gratitude. "I just wanted to thank them," she says. The teacher stands up, his expression serious. He thinks that the person who saved them was probably an illegal magician. But it is true that he saved us all. The students look at each other, relief washing over them. "Thank you, Mr. Stranger Magician," they say in unison. Minato stands a short distance away, watching with a detached expression. He sees that everyone is fine and feels satisfaction. However, not everyone is at peace. A boy with vibrant red hair is watching Minato from the side. His orange eyes are narrowed with suspicion and jealousy. He looks at the other students and then back at Minato, his teeth gritted in anger. Even those guys, he thinks, his mind filled with resentment toward the quiet boy. A girl with blue hair stands nearby, her gaze fixed on Minato. She replays the events with precision. She remembers how Minato defeated a demon soldier with level 1 magic. She thinks about the scale of power she witnessed. No student can use 2 magic attributes, she tells herself. It is a physiological impossibility. Not even that guy, she thinks. There is no way he can use 2 magic attributes, she concludes. The null attribute user must be a different person. She looks at him one last time, her eyes filled with wariness. Kusanagi-kun, what are you? Minato begins to walk away, his bag slung over his shoulder. The red-haired boy follows him. He blocks his path, his hands clenched. Kusanagi, what are you? He shouts. Minato stops and looks at him with a bored expression. The red-haired boy is breathing heavily. I will kill you, he threatens. There is no way that fucking small fry is strong, he thinks. After school, Minato is walking home alone. Suddenly, he is surrounded. The red-haired boy and his gang step out, blocking his way. Minato stops and sighs. You guys are persistent. Stop playing dumb, the bully shouts. You are definitely using a dirty trick. The red-haired boy grabs Minato's collar. Come with me, he commands. Minato does not move. He thinks there is no need to run away. The gang closes in, forming a circle. They are all grinning. Punches follow from every direction. Can you not do anything without your magic? The bully asks. As the punches rain down, none make contact. A layer of energy surrounds Minato. A magic barrier manifests, solid and impenetrable. The bully's fist hits the barrier. He screams, what are you? Minato is on the ground as the red-haired bully towers over him, his face twisted with a malicious grin. The bully screams out, asking what Minato is doing as he prepares to strike. His heavy boot comes down with force, connecting with the defensive field surrounding the quiet boy. Minato looks up with eyes that show no fear, only a deep sense of boredom at the repetitive nature of this aggression. The surrounding air is thick with the scent of mana as the barrier holds firm against the physical assault. Nearby, Yuka stands with her arms crossed over her chest, her blue hair catching the light as she watches the pathetic display with a cold and judgmental gaze. Her eyes are sharp, analyzing every movement and the hidden power within Kusanagi. The red-haired boy freezes in place as he notices her presence, his face turning pale as he stutters her name. He realizes his attempt at intimidation has been witnessed by someone far above his ranking. The psychological pressure in the alleyway shifts instantly as Yuka maintains her silent vigil. The red-haired boy stands frozen in place as the gravity of his situation weighs heavily upon his shoulders, his eyes wide and dilated with a sudden and overwhelming sense of fear. He stares directly at the blue-haired girl who has interrupted his moment of cruel dominance, her presence alone enough to shift the power dynamic of the entire alleyway. Yuka is a name that carries immense weight in this academy, and as the word slips from his trembling lips it is clear that he recognizes the sheer gap in their respective standings and magical prowess. The sweat begins to bead on his forehead, a physical manifestation of the intense psychological pressure that Yuka exerts simply by standing before him with her arms crossed. He attempts to regain some semblance of his former bravado, but the stuttering of her name betrays the absolute terror currently coursing through his veins. He looks down at the boy on the ground, Kusanagi, and then back to the powerful girl whose cold gaze seems to pierce right through his fragile ego like a frozen blade. The surrounding atmosphere of the academy training grounds feels suddenly colder, the wind whipping past them as if echoing the tension that has gripped this small group of students. Tadano, the red-haired leader of this small gang of bullies, tries to find an excuse for his actions while his heart hammers against his ribs. He forces a pathetic and shaky smile to hide his malice behind a mask of casual playfulness, but the effort is entirely transparent. He claims that they are merely playing around and that nothing serious is happening here between them and the quiet boy on the dirt. However, Yuka is not deceived by his lies for even a single second. Her eyes narrow and her blue hair shifts slightly in the breeze as she maintains her judgmental vigil. She speaks sharply, stating that she knows exactly what they are doing and that she has seen enough of their behavior to understand their true nature. She knows that they have been bullying Kusanagi, and the disdain in her voice is so palpable that it seems to vibrate in the air. She looks at the three boys with an expression of pure disgust, her features contorted in a way that shows she finds their actions to be beneath the dignity of any student attending such a prestigious magic academy. Tadano can only stand there with his hand slightly raised as if to stop her words from reaching him, but the damage to his reputation is already being done in real time. The other boys in his group look equally uncomfortable, realizing they have been caught by someone who has the power to report them to the authorities or worse. Yuka continues her verbal assault, asking them if they are not deeply ashamed of themselves for picking on someone they perceive to be weaker and less capable. She is a paragon of justice in this moment, her eyes shining with a righteous fury that makes the bullies want to shrink into the shadows and disappear. The red-haired boy grinds his teeth together as the humiliation of being lectured by Yuka in front of Kusanagi begins to turn his fear into a volatile and dangerous anger. He turns away, leading his group away from the scene as he utters a pained sound of frustration that sounds more like a growl. As he walks, his mind is full of dark thoughts and a growing resentment that threatens to consume him. He blames Kusanagi for everything that has just transpired, unable to take responsibility for his own choices. In his twisted logic, it is not his own cruelty that has caused Yuka to look at him with disgust, but rather the mere existence of the boy he was just tormenting. He believes that Kusanagi is the root of all his problems and the reason why the girl he admires now views him as a common thug. The red-haired boy is consumed by a black and oily hatred, his fingers twitching with a desperate need to lash out and reclaim his lost pride. Meanwhile, Yuka turns her attention back to Kusanagi, her expression softening only slightly as she reaches out her hand to help him. She tells him that they should leave this place, her voice firm but lacking the edge it held when she was addressing the bullies. She grabs Kusanagi by the arm and pulls him up from the sandy ground, leading him away from the sight of his humiliation. Kusanagi follows her silently, his dark eyes showing no real emotion as he allows himself to be led like a puppet. However, the peace of the moment is shattered almost instantly as Tadano stops walking. He stands with his back to them, his shoulders shaking with a silent and terrifying rage that radiates from his body in waves. He cannot let this go and he cannot allow Kusanagi to walk away while he is left with the bitter taste of defeat and shame in his mouth. He turns around with a face that is no longer human, but a mask of pure and unadulterated malice. He screams out a curse against Kusanagi, his voice cracking with the intensity of his hatred as he prepares to commit an unspeakable act. A dark and purple aura begins to emanate from his body, the air around him crackling with the sudden influx of chaotic mana that smells of ozone and burnt sulfur. He is preparing a spell that is far too powerful for a simple schoolyard dispute, a lethal incantation meant to destroy. He raises his hand and a glowing magic circle forms in front of his palm, its runes spinning with a violent and erratic energy that threatens to spiral out of control. He screams that he is going to fucking kill Kusanagi, his intent to murder as clear as the bright blue sky above them. The other students gasp in horror as they witness this blatant violation of academy rules and basic human decency. Yuka is caught completely off guard, her eyes widening as she realizes that Tadano has truly lost his mind and intends to kill. She screams his name and asks him what he thinks he is doing, but her words are lost in the roar of the mana that is now being channeled into the attack. Kusanagi remains incredibly calm, his eyes fixed on the red-haired boy who is about to unleash a lethal blast of magic without a single shred of remorse. Tadano laughs like a maniac, his eyes bloodshot and wide with an insanity that has taken hold of his soul. He believes that he has already won and that no amount of cheating or luck can save Kusanagi from the sheer power he is about to unleash. He releases the spell and a massive torrent of fire and energy erupts from his magic circle with a sound like a jet engine. The blast is enormous, a wall of white-hot flame that seems to swallow the entire area in a blinding and suffocating light. Yuka can only scream as the inferno approaches them, her hands raised in a futile attempt to protect herself and Kusanagi from the heat. The explosion is deafening, a shockwave that kicks up a massive cloud of dust and debris that obscures everything from view. Tadano continues to laugh, his chest heaving as he watches the destruction he has caused with a sense of dark satisfaction. He is certain that Kusanagi is nothing more than ash now, a victim of his superior strength. His lackeys look on with a mixture of awe and fear, one of them wondering aloud if the boy is truly dead. Tadano mocks their concern and claims that they can just say it was an accident or a case of magic getting out of control during an unsanctioned practice session. He is already planning his cover story, his mind completely detached from the reality of his murderous act. But as the dust begins to settle, a shape begins to emerge from the haze that defies all logic. It is not a pile of ash, but a structure of earth that has risen from the ground to protect the targets. Kusanagi has created a shield that has completely neutralized the fire blast without taking a single scratch. He walks out from behind the barrier, his clothes and hair completely untouched by the flames as if he were walking through a gentle rain. His voice is cold and steady as he speaks, noting that he has tolerated Tadano thinking of him as a mere brat for long enough. He remarks that apparently stupidity can only be cured by death and that it is now time for him to discipline the red-haired bully. Tadano is paralyzed with shock, his mouth hanging open as he stares at the boy who should be dead. He cannot comprehend how his ultimate attack was so easily blocked by a supposed failure. Kusanagi raises a single finger and a small yellow magic circle appears at its tip, spinning with a precision that is terrifying to behold. It is a tiny thing compared to the massive circle Tadano used, but it carries an aura of absolute and ancient authority. Tadano tries to launch another attack in a fit of desperation, but Kusanagi simply whispers the words magic drain. Suddenly, green vines of energy erupt from Kusanagi's small circle and lash out across the training ground. They wrap themselves around Tadano and his companions, binding them tightly in a glowing green embrace. The bullies scream as they feel their very life force and mana being ripped from their bodies by the vines. They collapse to the ground one by one, their strength completely gone as they lie in a heap of defeated and twitching limbs. Kusanagi walks over to the unconscious form of Tadano and casually sits down on the boy's back, using his enemy as a makeshift chair. He looks up at the sky and muses that this experience should make them reflect on their actions for a bit. Yuka stands a few feet away, her mouth agape as she tries to process the impossible feat she has just witnessed. She asks Kusanagi what that magic was and her voice trembles with a mixture of confusion and profound awe. She demands to know who he exactly is, her mind unable to reconcile the weak boy she thought she knew with the powerhouse who just decimated 3 bullies with a single finger. Kusanagi looks at her with a bored and slightly annoyed expression, a small puff of air escaping his lips as he finds her line of questioning to be tedious. He thinks to himself that this whole situation is so annoying, and then he looks directly at the blue-haired girl and tells her that rather than asking him questions, she should probably be saying something else. Kusanagi stands there with a heavy sigh, his expression clouded by irritation as he looks at the blue-haired girl standing before him. He finds the entire situation annoying and does not hide the fact that he would rather be anywhere else. He tells Yuka that rather than asking him questions, she should probably be saying something else. Yuka stands frozen, her cheeks flushing pink as she processes his blunt words. She realizes that despite his cold demeanor, he has saved her from something tragic. She stammers, her voice barely a whisper, before she finally finds her courage. "I will give you my regards for helping me," she says, her eyes darting away in embarrassment. She manages to say thank you, acknowledging the debt she owes. Kusanagi simply nods, his eyes closed as he accepts her gratitude with stoic indifference. He tells her okay then, and instructs her to answer his question, keeping the power dynamic firmly in his favor. The sunlight glints off her blue hair as she looks down, feeling the weight of the moment. Kusanagi turns and walks away, his silhouette growing smaller against the academy training grounds. The scene shifts as the sun dips below the horizon and the world is plunged into the deep blues and purples of night. A massive full moon hangs in the sky, casting an ethereal glow over the ruins of old Shibuya. The buildings are shattered and overgrown, standing as silent sentinels of a forgotten era. The air is thick with dread and the lingering scent of mana gone sour. In the darkness, a figure moves with speed and grace. It is a boy dressed in a black hoodie, his face partially obscured by the shadow of his hood. He moves with focused intent as he navigates the urban graveyard. He leaps from the edge of a high-rise building, his body cutting through the night air like a silent arrow. As he falls, a glowing green magic circle manifests beneath his feet, acting as a solid platform in mid-air. He uses these circles as stepping stones, his boots clicking against the magical runes with practiced ease. He is the hidden guardian of this city, a shadow that hunts the things that crawl in the dark. His eyes are sharp and cold as he surveys the landscape below. He thinks to himself that he had a bad feeling about tonight, which is why he came to check things out. He recalls that he had killed all the monsters in this area during the afternoon, yet the streets are already full of them again. He realizes that this is not a normal occurrence and wonders if it is a bad omen for the future of the city. He lands on a rooftop, crouching low to avoid detection. He notes that if it is just Shibuya, he alone is enough to handle the situation. However, his senses are honed and he can feel the presence of monsters in other places as well. He thinks that this might be too much for the police and even the official magicians are likely no good in a real crisis. He knows that he must act, but he must also be careful. He needs a plan to deal with the rising tide of monsters. For now, his priority is clear. He decides that he will wipe out the monsters around here first. He must do so carefully, ensuring that he does not stand out or reveal his true identity. He raises his hand and a brilliant yellow magic circle forms in the air. It is intricate and full of ancient power, spinning with a low hum. Suddenly, pillars of golden light shoot down from the sky, striking the monsters prowling the streets below. A massive wolf-like creature with glowing red eyes is caught in the blast, its body disintegrating into mana as it lets out a silent scream. The boy moves with lethal efficiency, his magic cutting through the shadows like a divine blade. Elsewhere in the city, a man walks down a dark alleyway, his steps unsteady and his voice slurred. He is wearing a suit and has a red tie wrapped around his forehead. He is clearly drunk, singing to himself as he stumbles toward home. He is completely unaware of the danger lurking behind him. A monstrous creature with jagged teeth and multiple eyes hangs from the side of a building, its mouth dripping with saliva. The monster lunges, its jaws opening wide to consume the human. But before it can strike, a flash of green light cuts through the darkness. The boy in the black hoodie has arrived in time, his magic binding the creature and pulling it away. The drunk man stops for a second, feeling a sudden breeze. He looks around with a confused expression, blinking his tired eyes. He mutters, his head tilting as he tries to process what happened. He decides it was his imagination and continues on his way. Kusanagi remains hidden, watching the man walk away to ensure he is safe. He thinks to himself that he did not get caught, which is a relief. However, he is not alone. In another part of the alley, a man with blonde hair and sunglasses is holding up a pink smartphone. His eyes are wide with excitement as he watches the green beam of light dissipate. He has captured the entire event on camera. "Awesome, I got it all," he whispers, his fingers trembling. He knows this footage is viral-worthy material. The screen of his phone shows a clear image of the hooded boy, a silent witness to the secret war. As the scene transitions, we find ourselves inside the prestigious Magic Academy. The light filters through tall, arched windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. The setting is the dean's office, a room that feels heavy with history and authority. The walls are lined with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, packed with ancient tomes and magical manuscripts. The dean, a man with a thick white beard and a weathered face, sits behind a massive wooden desk. His hands are clasped together in front of his mouth, and his eyes are sharp as he surveys the students before him. His assistant, a younger man in a sharp suit and a blue tie, stands beside him. The assistant speaks with a firm and serious tone. He explains that it has come to the attention of the school administration that several students were seen using magic outside of the designated school grounds. He emphasizes the gravity of the situation, stating that if these reports are true, the school will have no choice but to expel those involved. The camera pans to show the students who have been summoned. Yuka stands with her blue hair glowing slightly in the light, her expression one of intense focus. Kusanagi stands beside her, his dark hair falling over his eyes as he maintains a stoic and indifferent posture. Across from them is Tadano, the red-haired boy who has been a constant source of trouble. Tadano is not hiding his aggression. He points a finger directly at Kusanagi, his face twisted into a mask of deceit. He shouts that it was not his group that initiated the use of magic. He claims that Kusanagi was the one who approached them looking for a fight. He is lying so casually that it is almost impressive. Kusanagi looks down, a single bead of sweat rolling down his temple as he listens to the false accusations. He thinks to himself that this guy really can lie without blinking an eye. He finds the entire process to be an incredible drag. He knows he needs to explain himself, but the effort of dealing with someone like Tadano feels exhausting. Before Kusanagi can utter a single word, Yuka erupts. Her face is flushed with anger, and she cannot contain her indignation any longer. She screams that Kusanagi was the one being bullied by Tadano and his friends. She tells the dean and the assistant that it was Tadano who used magic first. The assistant looks surprised, repeating the word first as he processes the implication. He realizes that if Tadano used magic first, then Kusanagi's use of magic might have been a reaction. Yuka continues her passionate defense, her voice ringing through the quiet office. She insists that Kusanagi did absolutely nothing wrong and that his actions were purely in self-defense. Kusanagi watches her, his eyes wide with a mix of surprise and curiosity. He did not expect her to go to such lengths for him. Tadano tries to counter, his voice wavering as he claims they also did nothing. Yuka shuts him down immediately, screaming at him to shut up. She asks him what kind of person bullies someone else and then tries to blame them when things go wrong. She asks if he feels any shame at all for his behavior. Tadano is cornered, his face turning a deep shade of red as his frustration boils over. He insults Kusanagi, calling him a small fry who is not worthy of being at this school. He claims he was simply cleaning up the trash. Yuika's gaze turns ice cold. She tells him that he is the one who is truly unworthy of the academy. Tadano becomes desperate and pathetic. He yells that he is at the top of their class and that he is the only one who deserves to stand by her side. He demands that she look at him and tells her to become his woman. Yuka does not hesitate for even a millisecond. She tells him there is not a chance. She lists the reasons for her rejection with brutal honesty. She rejects him because he is a bully, because he is a violent person, and because the timing of his confession is nonsensical and absurd. Tadano's world shatters. His eyes go wide and blank, and his jaw drops in total shock. He looks as if he has been struck by a physical blow. He collapses to the floor, his body going limp as his mind fails to process the absolute rejection. Kusanagi watches the scene with a pained expression. He thinks to himself that while Tadano definitely deserved to be rejected, the way Yuka handled it was truly brutal. The dean watches the entire exchange with a calm and calculating gaze. He speaks up, his voice carrying the weight of finality. He agrees that it appears Tadano and his group are the ones at fault. He notes that Kusanagi was only using his magic for self-defense against a group of aggressors. The dean declares that the school has no need for students who use their magical abilities for selfish and cruel desires. He looks at the group of bullies and tells them that they are all hereby expelled. The room falls silent as the weight of the sentence sinks in. Tadano and his friends are devastated, crying out in protest. They try to shift the blame to their leader, a boy they call Ju-chan, claiming they were only following orders. The assistant ignores their pleas and tells Kusanagi and Yuka that they are free to return to their classes. As the two students leave the office, the heavy door slams shut with a resounding thud. Yuka is still fuming, her shoulders tense as she walks down the corridor. Kusanagi follows a few paces behind, watching her back. He reflects on everything that has happened since he arrived in this world. He thinks about how many times Yuka has stepped up to save him or defend him. He remembers her bravery in the classroom and her fierce loyalty during the fight in the city. His thoughts drift to a deeper and more somber place. He acknowledges the truth that the original Kusanagi Minato died. He is a reincarnated soul occupying this body. He wonders about the life of the boy who came before him. Was he bullied to the point of death, or was his passing a simple accident like a car crash? He does not have the answers, but he is certain that the bullies were guilty of something terrible. He looks at his hands, feeling the mana flowing through his veins. He hopes that the risks he is taking and the path he has chosen will eventually pay off. The scene shifts back to the dean's office after Kusanagi and Yuka have left. The dean is now speaking with a different student. She has long, flowing blue hair and a composed demeanor. This is Mizuha Ruka, a third-year student from the Elite S class. She is the one who provided the initial report about the incident. The dean expresses his gratitude for her diligence. He asks her to pass on his regards to her father, who is one of the school's most important investors. Ruka is accompanied by a tall boy with brown hair named Katsuragi Ruji, who is also a third year in the S class. Ruji is intrigued by the report. He notes that if the details are accurate, this Kusanagi boy must be incredibly strong. He explains that fighting multiple mages simultaneously is a feat that is nearly impossible unless there is a massive gap in power levels. He asks Ruka if she believes Kusanagi might be even stronger than they are. She calmly replies that she does not think so, but she admits that she has become very interested in him. They walk together through the hallways, their presence commanding respect from the younger students. They plan to keep an eye on Kusanagi to see just how competent he really is. Finally, we return to the classroom where the sun is shining brightly through the windows. The atmosphere is quiet and peaceful, a sharp contrast to the tension in the dean's office. Kusanagi is sitting at his desk, his head resting on his arm. He looks out the window, his expression one of boredom and lethargy. He thinks to himself that now that things have finally become peaceful, he has lost all of his motivation to do anything. He feels like a battery that has run out of charge. In the background, a group of his classmates are huddled around a phone, whispering excitedly. They are watching a viral video of a hooded figure using powerful green magic to destroy monsters in the ruins of the city. They are calling the figure the Black Mage and talking about how cool and powerful he is. Kusanagi overhears their conversation and feels a flicker of curiosity. He wonders if the term Black Mage is used in the same way as a magic noble in this society. He stays in his slumped position, his eyes half closed as he listens to the students talk about the very identity he is trying so hard to hide. He wonders if the term Black Mage is used in the same way as a magic noble in this society. Kusanagi leans his head on his hand, his dark eyes reflecting a deep sense of lethargy as he gazes out the classroom window. He listens to the muffled chatter of his classmates who are huddled around a glowing phone screen, wondering if the mysterious Black Mage carries the same weight as a magic noble. He sighs, deciding that these viral rumors do not concern him in the slightest. His mana feels stagnant as he tries to enjoy the rare peace of the academy afternoon. Suddenly, the classroom door slides open and a firm, loud voice calls out his name. An instructor stands at the entrance, waving his hand to grab the attention of the room. He announces that the students who could not get measured during the last session are going to get measured now. Kusanagi stands up slowly, his movements heavy with a profound lack of motivation. Yuka follows close behind him, her vibrant blue hair catching the sunlight. She looks at him with a sharp and calculating gaze, her internal thoughts racing with a mix of suspicion and intense curiosity. She notes that he appears fully recovered and wonders if he was healed by some unknown force. She clenches her fist, thinking that this time she will finally find out exactly what Kusanagi is capable of doing. As they move toward the testing area, the sound of their footsteps echoes against the floor. Yuka suddenly freezes in her tracks, her blue eyes widening in pure disbelief as she looks ahead. The other students gasp in unison, their faces twisted into masks of utter confusion. They whisper in shock, unable to believe what is happening. Standing before them is Mizuha Ruka. Yuka is paralyzed, her mind screaming as she asks what her sister is doing here. The instructor raises his voice to cut through the low hum of the testing hall, calling out the name Kusanagi Minato. The young man steps forward with a gait that suggests a heavy weariness, his dark hair messy and his eyes fixed on the floor. He approaches the center of the room where a massive, jagged crystal of pure mana-conductive material stands on a metallic pedestal. It is a daunting sight, shimmering with a cold, pale light that reflects the overhead fluorescent lamps. Kusanagi knows that this machine is the gatekeeper of their rankings, the cold arbiter of the worth of a student in this academy. He pauses for a moment, his mind racing back to the last time he stood before such a device. The memory of the crystal shattering into 1,000 sparkling shards under the pressure of his true power is still fresh in his mind. He cannot let that happen again. He must be careful. He must suppress the raging ocean of his mana into a mere trickle, enough to pass but not enough to cause a scene. He slowly extends his arm, his hand hovering just inches away from the crystalline surface. The air around his palm seems to distort slightly as he begins the delicate process of mana suppression. Finally, he makes contact. The surface of the crystal is freezing to the touch, but almost immediately, a warm golden glow begins to emanate from the point where his skin meets the stone. It is a soft, flickering light, far removed from the blinding radiance he is truly capable of producing. Kusanagi grits his teeth, his internal focus entirely dedicated to holding back the floodgates. Sweat begins to bead on his forehead, a single drop tracing a path down his temple. He feels the machine searching his core, probing for the depth of his magical reserves. He feeds it just enough, a tiny fraction of a percent of his potential. On the side of the pedestal, a digital display begins to cycle through numbers at an incredible speed. It blurs into a white streak before the gears of the processor slow down. The classmates around him lean in, their faces a mixture of boredom and mockery. They expect nothing from the boy who has always seemed so lackluster. The display finally settles with a soft chime. 3 digits appear on the screen. 0, 0, and finally a 1. The total magic power amount is displayed as exactly 100. Kusanagi pulls his hand back, his shoulders slumping as he exhales a long, shaky breath. The effort of restraining himself was more taxing than a full-scale battle would have been. He looks down at his hand, which is still trembling slightly from the strain. The instructor, a man dressed in a sharp gray suit with a blue tie, looks at the screen and then back at Kusanagi with an expression of mild surprise and disappointment. He had hoped for more from the student who had been the subject of so many rumors lately. He checks the readings again to ensure there was no error in the machine. Kusanagi is panting now, his chest rising and falling as he tries to regain his composure. The classmates are no longer silent. The room fills with the sound of muffled laughter and biting comments. They whisper to one another about how pathetic the score is. 100 is the kind of power level one would expect from a commoner who has never even seen a magic book, not a student at this prestigious academy. They call him useless, a waste of space in their batch. They mock his lack of an attribute, noting that having no elemental affinity usually means a mage has no future in the field of combat. Yuka stands among them, but she does not join in the laughter. Her blue eyes are wide with suspicion. She watched the way Kusanagi moved, the way he breathed. She knows what he did in the forest. She saw him decimate the demon soldiers with a level of power that should have broken the scale of any assessment machine. She thinks to herself that something is definitely wrong. She knows his true potential involves fire and a mastery of the null attribute. The idea that he could manipulate his own mana output to such a precise degree is terrifying. It implies a level of control that most high-ranking mages do not achieve until they are decades older. She watches him wipe the sweat from his face, seeing the small, satisfied smirk that he tries to hide. Kusanagi thinks to himself that this was a perfect result. He managed to give them a number that was low enough to be ignored but high enough to keep him in the academy. He has gotten a grip on his powers, even if the process is exhausting. Suddenly, the atmosphere in the room shifts. The heavy double doors at the end of the hall swing open with a loud thud. 2 figures walk in, their presence immediately commanding the attention of everyone present. The first is Mizuha Ruka, the eldest daughter of the Mizuha family and a prominent third-year student. She is followed by Katsuragi Ryuji, another powerful third-year. Ruka is the embodiment of noble arrogance, her long blue hair flowing behind her as she walks with a confident, measured stride. She looks at the display on the pedestal of Kusanagi and then at the boy himself. Her eyes are cold and dismissive. She scoffs, noting that the score of 100 is barely worth her time. She tells Ryuji that they are done with their business here, as there is clearly nothing of interest to see. She begins to walk away, her heels clicking sharply against the polished floor. But she stops when she sees Yuka. The relationship between the two sisters is clearly strained. Ruka stands over Yuka, her height and her aura of power creating an intense psychological pressure. She mocks Yuka for being saved by a guy whose magic power is merely 100. She asks if it is true, her voice dripping with venom. Yuka can only look down at her shoes, her hands trembling as she clenches the fabric of her skirt. Ruka continues her assault, telling Yuka that she is not suited to be a mage. She suggests that Yuka should quit the academy and enroll in a normal school where her lack of talent will not be so obvious. She brings up their past, reminding Yuka of every time they competed. Whether it was academics, sports, or magicraft, Yuka never won. Not even once. The room is filled with a dark, suffocating aura as Ruka exerts her killing intent. Yuka is on the verge of tears, her face flushed with shame and fear. She tries to find the words to defend herself, but the presence of Ruka is too overwhelming. Ruka tells her that she is more than enough to represent the family name and that Yuka is just a blemish on their reputation. Kusanagi has been watching this from the side. He sees the way Yuka is breaking down under the cruelty of the sister. He decides he has seen enough. He steps forward, his hands in his pockets, and speaks in a calm, clear voice that cuts through the oppressive aura of Ruka. He tells Ruka that she is being quite arrogant. The room goes silent. No one can believe that a student with a power level of 100 would dare to speak back to a third-year noble. Ruka turns to him, her eyes flashing with rage. She asks what he said, her voice low and dangerous. Kusanagi does not back down. He tells her that forcing someone out of their own way of living is something even a family member is not allowed to do. He adds that the same goes for forcing someone to give up on their dreams. He looks her straight in the eye, his expression one of bored indifference. He mocks her claim that they were having a conversation, saying it sounded more like she was just ordering her sister around. Ruka is livid. She asks him who he thinks he is to lecture her. Kusanagi simply shrugs. He then proposes a solution to their disagreement. He suggests a 2-on-2 magic duel in 2 weeks. Ruka is taken aback by the sheer audacity of the proposal. She laughs, asking if he truly thinks he can win against her. Kusanagi smiles, a small and confident curve of his lips. He tells her that it is still impossible for now, of course, but that things will be different in 2 weeks. He stands there, bathed in the light of the hallway, looking every bit the powerful mage he is pretending not to be. He asks her if she is planning to run away now after spouting all that nonsense earlier. Ruka stares at him, her pride wounded and her curiosity piqued by his strange confidence. Kusanagi maintains his relaxed posture, his hands still deep in his pockets as he stares back at her with an unwavering gaze. The scene shifts to the testing hall where the atmosphere is thick with the lingering scent of ozone and the weight of high expectations. Kusanagi Minato stands with a relaxed posture, his hands buried deep in the pockets of his crisp white academy blazer. His dark hair is slightly disheveled, casting a soft shadow over his eyes as he looks toward his companion with an expression that is both bored and observant. He asks Yuka what she intends to do, his voice a low murmur that barely carries over the silence of the room. Yuka stands a few paces away, her vibrant blue hair framing a face that is currently etched with a mixture of fear and determination. She is dressed in the standard female uniform of the academy, her white jacket contrasting with the dark skirt. Her hands are trembling as she reaches up to clutch the fabric of her red tie, a nervous habit that betrays the internal storm of her emotions. She looks down at the floor, her eyelashes casting long shadows against her pale cheeks. She is thinking about the crushing weight of her sister Ruka's words and the expectations of the noble Mizuha family. The pressure of being the second daughter, the one who is constantly compared to a genius, feels like a physical weight on her shoulders. She takes a sharp breath, her chest rising and falling rapidly as she tries to find her voice. Finally, she looks up, her blue eyes shining with a sudden spark of defiance. She announces that she will participate in the duel as well. Kusanagi watches her, his expression remains neutral but there is a slight softening in his gaze. He tells her that it is decided then. He adds that if they win, the opposition is not allowed to say anything on the matter anymore. He stands tall, his presence suddenly feeling much larger than his recorded magic power of 100 would suggest. Across from them, Ruka Mizuha stands with an air of cold superiority. Her long blue hair flows down her back like a silken waterfall, and her eyes are like chips of ice. She looks at her younger sister with a mixture of pity and contempt. She states that if her side wins, Yuka must quit the Magicraft Academy immediately. Beside Ruka, the third-year student Katsuragi Ryuji stands with a confident smirk. His brown hair is styled back, and his orange eyes glow with a faint light of his own mana. He raises a hand in a dismissive wave, telling the younger students that he won't hold back during the fight. He adds that they should be prepared to face the harsh reality of the gap in their power levels. The group then begins to disperse, leaving the testing hall behind. The scene transitions to a wide shot of the sky above the academy. The vast expanse is a brilliant shade of azure, dotted with fluffy white clouds that drift lazily in the wind. The sun is high, its light reflecting off the glass windows of the academy buildings. The camera moves to the rooftop of one of the school buildings. The wind is stronger here, whipping Kusanagi's hair across his forehead. He leans against the metal railing, looking out over the sprawling campus. Yuka stands behind him, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. She tells him that she would like to ask for his help. She looks at his back, her heart racing. She knows that he is the only one who can help her bridge the gap between her current level and the power needed to face Ruka. She speaks with a sudden burst of energy, saying that she wants him to teach her more about magic. Kusanagi does not turn around immediately. He thinks to himself about why he was suddenly called up to the rooftop. He reminds her that he is just a lowly mage whose magic power amount is only 100. He asks her if she is truly sure that she wants to be taught by someone like him. Yuka steps forward, her voice firm. She tells him that she knows he is hiding his real power. She adds that he is definitely much stronger than her, regardless of what the machine says. Kusanagi finally turns to look at her, a small, thoughtful hum escaping his lips. He contemplates his next move, his mind working through the tactical advantages of training her. He thinks about how he set it up so that Ruka would get provoked and suggest a fight against him. He realizes that there is no way he can tell Yuka the truth about his manipulations. He watches her as she suddenly drops to her knees, her forehead nearly touching the concrete of the rooftop. She begs him with everything she has. Kusanagi exhales a long breath, looking down at the girl who is so desperate to change her fate. He tells her that it is all right and he will help her. Yuka looks up, her face lighting up with a mixture of relief and joy. Kusanagi adds a condition, saying that she must follow everything he says without question. He warns her that she cannot back out midway through the training. Yuka nods vigorously, promising that she will do exactly as he says. Kusanagi looks away, thinking to himself that there is no way he can decline when she begs him like that. He also realizes that he needs to prepare for the events that are coming in the near future. He thinks that raising a mage might not be such a bad way to spend his time. He tells her that they will begin right away, starting from today. Yuka asks where they will practice. The scene transitions to the exterior of a massive traditional estate. The house is a masterpiece of classical architecture, with dark wooden beams and sweeping tiled roofs. It is surrounded by a lush garden filled with manicured trees and stone paths. Kusanagi stands at the entrance, looking up at the grand structure. He remarks on how big the house is. Yuka stands beside him, now dressed in a pink and gray athletic tracksuit with her hair tied back. She explains that her father is a noble mage, so having such a large home is only natural. She looks a bit shy as she mentions that this is the first time she has ever invited a boy over to her house. She wonders to herself if Kusanagi finds it strange that she brought him here. She quickly adds that it is not like she has any weird intentions. Kusanagi ignores her rambling and states that they should get started. He calls her by her given name, Yuka. She flinches, her face turning a bright shade of crimson. She asks him why he suddenly called her by her given name. Kusanagi looks at her with a confused expression, explaining that her sister also goes by the name Mizuha, so people won't know who he is addressing if he uses their family name. Yuka looks down, her eyes swirling with embarrassment. Kusanagi asks if he should call her by a different name if she doesn't like it. She quickly tells him no and says that he can continue to call her Yuka. He tells her that they will start now. She looks at him with a serious expression and asks him to take care of her. Kusanagi begins the lesson by asking her a fundamental question. He asks her what exactly magic power is. Yuka smiles, thinking this is an easy question. She recites the textbook definition, saying that it is the energy inside the body that is needed to perform magic. She adds that incantations are a program-like way to automatically turn that magic power into magicraft. She then asks if it is possible to deliberately increase one's magic power amount. She answers her own question based on what she was taught, saying it is impossible because the limit of a person's magic power is determined pre-birth and stops increasing at a certain age. She looks proud of herself, asking him how her answers were. Kusanagi looks at her with a flat expression and tells her that all of her answers were incorrect. Yuka is shocked, her jaw dropping as she asks him what he said. Kusanagi explains that current mages are foolish for believing such limited theories. He tells her that magic power is not just within the body but also exists in nature itself. He adds that incantations are simply tools to back up magicraft and that it is indeed possible to intentionally increase one's magic power. Yuka stares at him in disbelief, stating that if what he is saying is true, it would overturn the entire foundation of the Magicraft Academy. Kusanagi tells her that it doesn't matter whether she believes it or not yet. He says he will simply teach her about the three things he just mentioned. He points to a spot on the stone ground and tells her to sit there. Yuka follows his instructions, sitting cross-legged on the floor. Kusanagi kneels behind her and tells her that he will channel magic power into her now. He instructs her to inform him once she feels it. Yuka looks skeptical, asking if she can really feel the magic power. Kusanagi tells her that she won't get stronger if she can't. He tells her to close her eyes as he reaches out to touch her back. His hand makes contact with her tracksuit, and a small spark of light appears at the point of contact. Suddenly, a massive pillar of blue mana erupts from the ground around them. The energy is violent and bright, swirling like a blue fire that reaches toward the sky. The ground beneath them seems to vibrate with the sheer intensity of the output. Kusunagi's expression is focused as he pours a precise amount of his own mana into her circuits. Yuika's eyes fly open, her pupils shrinking in surprise. She gasps, saying that her back feels incredibly hot. She exclaims that she is definitely feeling something now. The blue aura continues to flare around them, illuminating the entire courtyard of the estate. Kusanagi explains that what she is experiencing is magic power perception. He tells her that she must remember exactly how this feels. He adds that if she can feel it, then she can detect it. He says that eventually, she will be able to find the magic power that exists in nature. He tells her that she should make that her primary goal for the time being. Yuka regains her confidence, a small smirk appearing on her face. She boasts that she is the second daughter of the Mizuha family and she will master this in no time. Kusanagi looks at her from the corner of his eye, thinking to himself that she could only sense it after he poured in a massive amount of magic power. He thinks that it seems like Yuka really doesn't have much natural talent to be a mage. The scene transitions to 1 week later. The sun is once again shining over the Mizuha estate. Yuka is standing in the middle of the courtyard, her tracksuit damp with sweat and her hair sticking to her forehead. She has her fists clenched and her eyes are squeezed shut as she tries to replicate the feeling from a week ago. She is shaking from the effort, her breath coming in short, ragged gasps. Tears begin to well up in her eyes as she realizes she hasn't made any progress. She cries out in frustration, saying that she can't do it at all. A full week has passed since they began their intense sessions at the Grand Mizuha estate. Kusanagi Minato watches her, his dark hair messy as his eyes remain focused on her trembling form. He thinks to himself that she has been practicing, yet her progress is still painfully slow. He realizes that the girl is simply not quick at understanding the intricate flow of mana within her own body. Despite her lineage as a noble daughter of a prestigious family, the psychological pressure of the upcoming duel is clearly weighing on her heart. Minato looks up at the bright blue sky, noticing the passage of time and thinking that it is time for the confrontation. He decides to intervene once more to bridge the gap in her perception. He tells her firmly that he will pour his own magic power into her again. The atmosphere shifts as he steps closer. He reaches out and places his hand against her back, and suddenly, a violent surge of blue mana erupts around them. The energy is like a roaring waterfall of light, swirling with immense intensity as it flows into her magical circuits. Minato tells her to remain calm and then instructs her to open her eyes. Yuka slowly lifts her eyelids, her blue eyes shimmering with a new sense of clarity. She gasps as she realizes she can finally see it. She looks at the glowing green particles of mana dancing in the air. She is filled with a sudden joy, asking if this is truly what magic power looks like.